Now let's go to the West. Now in the Western Conference, I was only 2-2, which means I was 5-3 overall, picking in the first round. You know what? I'll take it. I did take Anaheim over Dallas, which worked out, and I took Chicago over St. Louis, which is the series that I almost predicted perfectly. I did, however, miss Minnesota over Colorado, which overtime of a Game 7, so how can you blame me? And I did miss the Sharks' monumental collapse against the Kings. So that sets up second round matchups in the Western Conference of Pacific number 1, Anaheim Ducks taking on Pacific number 3, Los Angeles Kings, and the Central Division number 3 team, the Chicago Blackhawks, number 1 and number 2, they are gone against the only wildcard team to make it to the second round in either conference, the Minnesota Wild. And you know something, they might actually be the wildcard team that I thought would have the worst chance of getting in. So let's take a look at that Pacific Division matchup. Pacific number 1 versus number 3, Anaheim Ducks versus Los Angeles Kings. Now the season series here was basically dominated by Anaheim. They won 4 of the 5 games, outscoring the Kings 13-8. As we mentioned in the first round video, the Ducks were quietly the best offensive team in hockey this year at 3.21 goals per game. They basically kept that up in the playoffs, averaging 3 1/3, tying them for 4th. But in the first round, the Kings really stepped up their offensive output, again due in large part to the fact that the Sharks collapsed so terribly. Los Angeles is averaging 3.71 goals per game, ranking them in 2nd place. Now, Los Angeles did give up 3.14 goals per game in the first round, mostly due to those first 2 games where they got dominated so poorly, which is a far cry from the 2.05 that they gave up through the season. This is a series that's likely to be won and lost on special teams, both of these teams averaging inside the top 6 in all categories in special teams. Power play, Anaheim ranks 4th, LA ranks 6th. Penalty kill, Anaheim ranks tied for 3rd, 89.7%. That's a great penalty kill, where the Kings rank 6th. And Anaheim's 26.9% power play is a far cry from the 16% that they managed to pull in the regular season. Same can be said for the Kings, 25% versus just 15.1 in the regular season. Los Angeles gave up a lot of shots against in the first round, 35.4 shots against per game, ranking them 14th. It's a good thing they have an all-world elite goaltender back there who at times looks unbeatable. Now they did average 31.9 shots per game to rank them 8th. Anaheim only generated just under 28 shots per game in the first round against Dallas. However, they were able to rank inside the top 5 in terms of shots against. Huge X factor here for Anaheim. They're going to have short memories. They struggled in that first round series against Dallas. They got to put that struggle behind them. They have to focus on the positives here, which was their special teams. The fact that they actually got their power play going in the first round is a huge boost to them, so they need to focus on the positives, put those struggles behind them. Huge X factor for the Kings. Seems like the fact that this team can just go into God mode. Like the Kings, it shocks me. This team can go from shit to gold seemingly at will. So, you know, just keep doing that. The LA Kings are the most deceptive team in hockey for me to try to bet for or against. I guess at the end of the day, I would rather get burned by unexpected circumstances than rely on them. But at the same time, I do think the Kings can win this series. So I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with the LA Kings to beat the Anaheim Ducks in 6 games. I think they split the first 2 games in Anaheim, but I think LA wins games 3 and 4 on home ice in LA. Game 5 goes back to Anaheim. Anaheim's a real good home team, so they're going to win Game 5. Game 6 comes back to Los Angeles. Jonathan Quick shuts the door. The Kings go to the Western Conference Finals by winning Game 6. Alright, here's the last one, folks. Probably the 2 lesser expected teams to have made this other matchup in the Western Conference. The number 3 ranked Chicago Blackhawks from the Central Division taking on the top wildcard team in the West, the Minnesota Wild. Season series here was actually 3-2 for Minnesota, but Chicago did outscore Minnesota in those 5 games, 15-14. Chicago had the 2nd best offense in hockey this year and kept that up in the first round, averaging 3.33 goals per game in the Round 1 series against St. Louis. They did very much shore up the defensive side of things as well, only giving up 2.33 goals per game to rank them 2nd. Minnesota was able to greatly increase their offensive output, averaging 3.14 goals per game in that 7-game series against Colorado, but they did give up 2.86 per game, which is a higher clip than through the regular season. One of the big question marks for both of these teams coming into the playoffs was going to be the penalty kill. Minnesota ranking 27th out of 30 teams in the league on the penalty kill this year, while Chicago only ranked tied for 19th. Both of these teams answered that bell in the first round. Chicago with a playoff leading 93.1% on the penalty kill in the first round. Minnesota inside the top 5 at 88% even. But neither team was impressive on the power play, ranking 9th and 10th respectively. Chicago gave up way too many shots in the first round, 15th out of 16 teams in the first round of the playoffs, 35.8 shots against per game. That is way too much against anybody at this level. Especially when you look at the other side, Minnesota leads the playoffs right now, only giving up 24.9 shots on goal per game. Minnesota also ranks 5th in shots per game at 33.3 even, Chicago ranking 10th. Big X factor in this series for Chicago. Keep the O, but don't forget the D. Because who can forget the D? Chicago's got to get that power play clipping a little bit better, but they've been scoring without it in the first round, which I think they're going to be able to keep doing, especially where Minnesota has a bit of a goaltending question. I think Chicago's going to be able to keep scoring, so they got to keep that going, but you got to stop some of those shots, giving up way too many shots, like we just said, 35.8 shots per game. They got to start defending that stuff. Corey Crawford cannot do everything. And a major X factor for Minnesota, quite frankly, who's going to be in net? Kemper looks like he may have injured himself in Game 7 against Colorado. Brizgalov has never been reliable throughout his whole career and was horrible in that first round series against Colorado. 4.25 goals against average and only an .826 save percentage. He got the win in Game 7, but he only had to face one shot. As far as I'm concerned, this is the Chicago Blackhawks series to lose. I don't like betting against a team twice, but I don't think Minnesota beats Chicago. I'm going to take Chicago to beat Minnesota in 6 games. I think Chicago wins the first 2 games on home ice, and they split games 3 and 4 in Minnesota. Game 5 in Chicago, I actually think Minnesota can kind of squeak one out there to stay alive in Game 5 in Chicago. Game 6, going back to Minnesota, Chicago's too good. Their top guys are too good. Chicago wins Game 6 to go to the Western Conference Finals. So that would set up a Western Conference Final of a pair of number 3 seeds with the Los Angeles Kings and the Chicago Blackhawks. So that's how I think the second round's going to go. I think Montreal and New York are going to come out of the Eastern Conference. I think Chicago and Los Angeles are going to come out of the Western Conference. Who do you think is going to win in the second round? Hit me up with your picks below. Comments, questions, queries, theories, all of it. Want them in the comments section below. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter. One more time, huge shout out to Jeffy Poo there for making the comments on the videos. And if you have a problem with the way that I do these videos, the style of videos, the quick cuts, the editing. If you guys have a problem with that, you gotta let me know, because if you don't let me know, I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing. I don't want to lose viewers. If it bothers you, you let me know. We're gonna see you for round 3.